part of the Board of Supervisors, if you would consider commissioning a similar study. We have almost 3,000 kids on the unincorporated Midcoast, and I'm very concerned that they could have increased levels of lead. I plan to get my children tested, but it's just something, I wanted to ask if you would consider commissioning a study for that.
I think that's a fair request, and if the MCC would send me a specific request, I will. I'll make sure it happens.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A lot of really important issues raised today. I appreciate everybody who's talked. The MCC will follow up with Lena and Don with your permission and see if we can flesh some of these requests out and have a little bit more action on some of them. Thank you so much for being here, Don. Come back anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, Greg, have you still got a Christmas tree up there?
I just can't get the Christmas spirit out.
Okay, good to see you. Have a good evening.
Good night. Second item on our regular agenda is the report that people were looking forward to earlier about the First Flush project. And Nicole Schmidt from RCD will give us a presentation on that.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. I am going to share my screen. All right. Can everybody see the presentation? Awesome.
Yes.
Cool. Well, my name is Nicole, and I am the Water Quality Program Coordinator for the San Mateo Resource Conservation District. And I'm excited to share with you the water quality results for the 2021 First Flush. In this presentation, I will talk about the pollutants that we measured this year, summarize some of the key findings, mention some solutions to water quality issues, and answer any questions. The San Mateo Resource Conservation District is a local hub for conservation, helping the people of San Mateo build a more thriving community for all. We are here to help people help the land. We have grown over the years to focus on 5 main areas: water, climate, wildlife, agriculture, and fire and forest health. So what exactly is First Flush? First Flush occurs with the first significant rain of the season. The RCD runs the First Flush program in San Mateo, where we recruit volunteers to help sample water and record field data. When it has not rained for a while and the rains finally come, pollutants that have accumulated in the watershed during the dry season get picked up by the rain and enter our storm drains, creeks, and oceans. And this storm water carries pollutants such as bacteria that can make people sick. So the RCD and our partners gather water samples from these local creeks during the first rain to see what the overall health of the watersheds look like and where there are areas we may need to focus on to improve water quality. So a watershed is an area of land where water naturally drains to one point, like a creek or a lake. In our case, on the coast side, our water eventually ends up in the ocean in the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, pictured here. And our everyday activities and the choices that we make have a really large impact on the health of our watersheds and oceans. Like when you're driving down Devil's Slide and you have your car brakes on, the metals from your brake pads end up in our waterways. Also, fertilizers or pesticides that individuals might use in their gardens can get carried through stormwater to local creeks and have a really large impact on the water quality. I want to take a moment to thank all of our dedicated and amazing volunteers. This is a community-based volunteer event. We could not do this First Flush program without participation from the community who engage in citizen science and help us collect water samples, field data, and measurements. Here are a few photos that were taken from this year's First Flush by a couple volunteers, including Mark Hubble and Carrie Dahlman. You can see groups collecting water samples, taking field notes, and hopefully having fun. And we ask a lot from our volunteers. They're required to be on training and are on call. Since we can't control the weather, it can be a bit tricky to call first flush. And as you can see, sometimes it can happen in the dark. I also want to take a moment to thank all of our partners and sponsors who make this program possible. The Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. We are one of 3 counties that participate in the first flush, along with Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. Also like to thank Sewer Authority Midcoast side, the San Mateo Harbor District, Surfrider Foundation, the City of Pacifica. This was actually the first year that we had a site from Pacifica, and we had a lot of folks interested in that site. So we're excited to continue this partnership. And also would like to thank the County of San Mateo Health System. So now that we've discussed a little bit about how our everyday choices impacts water quality, I'd like to talk about why water quality monitoring during first flush is important. Monitoring helps to identify what pollutants are of greatest concern and where. Monitoring also helps to provide information to support informed water quality management decisions, and establishes a continuous and consistent water quality data set so we can see if our water quality is improving or not over time. Some of our sites have data from 2009, so it's great to be able to see the overall trend of some of our historical sites. I'm now going to go over what pollutants we test for and why. Here is an overview of all the pollutants we look for, their potential causes and sources of these pollutants in our waterways, and their ecological impacts. I'll break this down a little and go over each pollutant one category at a time. So first we look for fecal indicator bacteria, specifically E. coli and Enterococcus. Potential sources of fecal indicator bacteria include feces from warm-blooded animals, particularly in this area, humans, pets, cows, horses, and wildlife. Analyzing fecal indicator bacteria gives us an idea of the amount of pathogens that is present in the water that could harm human health. Next, we look at 2 different nutrients, nitrates and orthophosphates. Nitrogen and phosphorus are primary nutrients that support the growth of plant tissues, which is why there are common ingredients in pesticides and fertilizers. But too much of these nutrients in the aquatic environment can lead to eutrophication that can cause harmful algae blooms that take away the oxygen in the water and cause fish and other aquatic organisms to die. And then also elevated nitrates in drinking water can have harmful effects on humans and other organisms. We also look at the presence of metals in the water samples. Specifically, we look for copper, zinc, and lead. These leach into the waterways from gutters, roofs, brake pads, industrial waste, paint, and fire, and impact human health and also cause a reduced reproduction in marine mammals. Another parameter we identify are total suspended solids, which leach into the waterways from construction sites, erosion, agricultural runoff, and fires. Total suspended solids attract charged particles such as pesticides and metals and impact the water column visibility and the ability of aquatic and marine organisms to respire. We also ask volunteers to record physical and chemical properties of the water, such as electrical conductivity, temperature, and pH. And we also ask volunteers to record field observations. So conductivity tells us if we correctly identified first flush. Since rain has a relatively low electrical conductivity compared to water that has been flowing in the creek for a while. So if conductivity is low, we know we are looking at data that is influenced by the rain and not just normal stream flow data. We also record temperature, since temperatures that are outside of the healthy range can have a negative ecological impact. And observations help give us context to the data, like if there was any trash present or maybe a dead organism that could be polluting the waterway. Identifying these observations helps us understand the data more. So now that we've gone through an overview of the RCD, first flush, and pollutants we look for and why, I want to summarize some of our key findings. Here's a map of all the sites that we sampled from this year. San Pedro and Pacifica was our northernmost site, and Kelly Avenue and Half Moon Bay is the southernmost site. The only site that we actually were not able to get water from was Montera Creek. So we sampled a total of 13 sites, and there was just no water running in Montera Creek during first flush this year. Here is a close-up of the sites that are in Pillar Point Harbor, since it was kind of difficult to see on that map. We have a lot of historical sites here like West Point Avenue and Vassar Drainage. And here is the all site map again and summary of some key findings. We found that Enterococcus, E. coli, orthophosphates, and copper had sites that were above the recommended amount considered safe for swimming. So in other words, some or all sites had concentrations of these pollutants that were above the pollution threshold. While there were no concerns observed for nitrates, lead, zinc, or total suspended solids at the sites we sampled this year. This is an example of how we analyze each pollutant. This graph shows the E. coli concentrations in all sites with the 1 to 10 dilution. The y-axis represents the coli concentration, and the x-axis shows the sites we sampled from north to south. The red line indicates that water quality objective, which is that pollution threshold or the limit of what the concentration should be to be considered safe for swimming. So any concentration that is